The area covered by the human hovel track has been home to our First Nations people for thousands of years. Aboriginal elder Nancy Rook tells us her Wiradjuri story.
My name is Nancy Rook. I'm a Wiradjuri elder, and I was born on the sandhills at Narandra in 1935. So I'm not telling you how old I am, you guess. Anyway, my grandmother brought me up. My mother had to go to work and Dad was away at the war for 5 years. So she had to go to work and I stayed with the grandmother and all my aunties and uncles from the sandhill. I learned the culture from them and I enjoyed living there with them in the one bedroom shack on the banks of the river. I didn't have much schooling because we weren't made to go to school in those days. And when we did go, we had to clean up the playground, so we didn't go very much. But what we did learn is a lot of cultural stuff around cultural ideas about the river, what we were supposed to do, women's business, men's business. Women were not allowed to infringe on men's business. So I learned all that, and that's still with me today. So I never talk about men's business because I don't know about it, only women's business. And when I go into the schools, I make sure that the teachers know that. I don't present any weapons or anything like that. Because I remember when I worked at TAFE, I took in a heap of boomerangs and I said, we will now paint the boomerangs, and they all got up and left, so that was the end of that one. So, you know, you live and learn these things as you go along. The boomerangs weren't, you know, the real live boomerangs that they're only just, you know, out of plywood, but they were still boomerangs, and the women weren't allowed to paint them. Because don't forget, Albury is a very diverse place. There's a lot of different tribes here, from as far away as Cairns, Perth, Darwin, Alice Springs, you name it, they're here. And they've all got their different cultural backgrounds and ways. So one way doesn't sort of mix in with the other way. So even though this is Wiradjuri land, my grandmother was an elder from the Wiradjuri people. She was brought up at Wellington in New South Wales, and that's Wiradjuri country as well. She was taken by a minister by the name of Pastor Watson, the Reverend Pastor Watson, and he was at Wellington and he brought her up. He gave her a good schooling, a good education, that was, in those days. And she became I think that she went out and looked after kids on properties and that, like a nanny. And then she met my grandfather, who was a wood chopper from Bendigo, and he came from England. And they got married, and they had a son by the name of Jack. Now, Jack Glyde, he went to the First World War, and he went to Noriel. And she said she didn't know whether he was alive or dead for 3 years because he was taken into the army, into the German army. He didn't say he was Aboriginal or he wouldn't have been in the army. And because he was fair, he was allowed in there. But he was taken prisoner by the Germans, and in the German war camp they didn't have any ways of getting out or news out. And she didn't know whether he was alive or dead for 3 years. And then the Red Cross came and told her he was alive. So that was a great thing. Wherever you lived in the tribe, you had a place. My grandmother was the educator. And she used to say to me, the way Aboriginal people are going to survive this world is through education. And the more they're educated, the better it will be for them, because then they'll be able to stand side by side and look after the land and themselves and everybody else in it. And that was her dying wish. Everybody was educated. That's why I went back to TAFE and got an education with a lot of other women of my age that never went to TAFE. Our second chance, we called it, and it was great. So we all did very well up there, run amok a few times, but never mind, we did it. But when I said that everybody had a place in the tribe, I'm talking about women who used to go and be midwives. That's all they did, was go up and down the river delivering babies or wherever. Then we had the nurses. That's what used to look after us. And they knew everything there was to know about, you know, all the bush tucker, bush medicine, everything like that. All the bush medicine. They knew everything. They were like doctors, and they would come and see you. Then we had people, spiritual people, that you could go and talk to. There was a lady up near Ningen, near Dubbo, between Dubbo and Wellington, and she was a spiritual woman. And if there was any problems in your family, and my grandmother said she went to see her when Uncle Jack was missing, and she talked about Uncle Jack and how could she get over the grief of losing her only son. And the lady counselled her, and she made beads out of seeds that were just in the bush and gave them to her. And they were her worry beads. And she was to sit and contemplate the worry beads, she told me. So that's how they used to be in the old days. There'd be the cooks, the people that we used to clean up. Us kids used to have to sit and listen to the stories, and especially the ones of the river bank. One story, it's about the reed women. Everywhere you went near the river, there was reeds, and we were told we were never to go to the river by ourselves, because these women could sing to you. They'd sing you over, and you'd hear this beautiful music, and you'd see these beautiful bubbles coming up, and oh, they were lovely, and they, you know, and they were really, really wonderful. These women down there, they'd sing and carry on, and if you went by yourself to the river, and you looked over and saw them, they'd grab you. You were gone forever. So you never went to the river by yourself. And one little kid, I was in the school telling that story to, and he said, "How do you know?" I said, "How do you know there's not?" You want to find out? So they were stories to keep us safe, you know, and the stories, all the stories that were around at that time was to keep us safe. We never were allowed to go by ourselves anywhere. We had to go with somebody, and it was very hard. A lot of the times when they have the big meetings like they used to have here in the old days, that was a very secure, all the tribes used to come to these places, and they would talk about marriage and land and food and the water. The rivers were never, ever a boundary. They belonged to everybody, because that's how they survived. The river was a way of getting around, you know, they had their boats and their way of talking around the river. The men generally did all the talking, where the women sat back and were in the background. But if there was something they couldn't settle, then they'd bring in the older women, the elders, and they would make the decision, like we do today, you know. We make decisions where you blokes go, "Yeah, we'll leave it to the women." Yeah, well, that's how they used to do it in the old days too. So it was quite good. The trees are very important to them. All trees were very important. Never cut them down. When they got their boomerangs, they got them when the river was low, and I went around the roots that were in the river and that were no good. They'd get their boomerangs from there. When they'd make the coolaments for the babies, they'd cut them out of the side of the tree, and they'd be bark. And when they'd cut them out of the side of the tree, us kids used to have to go down and get a handful of gravel from the river and make sure that it healed, the river, it healed. Then, and that we'd have to leave that tree alone for a while till it got better. So, you know, the river, everything was used in the land and not abused. You know, when the animals as well, you only took as much as you need to talk. Another story was the Stone people. The tribe up the river came down here and used to take all the fish out of the river. And the elders told them they had to leave some behind. We were always taught that. And they didn't. So they called in the Kodachi man, who was a magic man. He could do funny things. And he's still around today, we reckon. And he turned them all into stone. See, well, those stones in the river, that's them up there, because they never did what they were told. So things like that were told to us when we were little kids, and you don't forget them either. You never forget these stories. And a lot of the, you know, the stories of the possums and how they came, and you know, and the wombats and where they walked and everything was where our ancestors walked. We believe in the trees have spirit in them. We can talk to the trees and they will listen. We can hug a tree, they'll listen. But we're not allowed to, you know, harm them in any way. As I was saying, when I pass on to the other world, I'm getting, this tree behind me is my friend and my tree, so we're getting buried in there, not buried, but throwing out the ashes there and look out anybody that does the wrong thing. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. But a lot of times, you know, when the white man came, and my grandmother was saying that her family could remember the first white man coming down. And they thought they were spirit people. They didn't know who they were. And they were very frightened of them, wouldn't come near them until they learned to trust them, which they did eventually, you know. And when they, like when they did that track out here, the walking track, I believe there was a bit of trouble when they got through Holbrook and around that area when they were taking the track through. They wanted to put it in a certain place, but that was a spiritual place, and so they had to get some knowledgeable person down from Tumut and the Wiradjuri people up to have a look where it was and where it goes. And that's happening around here today. You see where a lot of the people have been, and their tools, where the tools locked down at the lagoon down here, outside Albury. That was a women's place. There was a birthing place down there, and that's where all the babies were born, from around this area, in that area. So, you know, things like that shouldn't be touched. Like this area here shouldn't be touched, and leave it as natural as they possibly can. Mungabareena means to me a very spiritual area, you know, where our ancestors were, and where they lived, they died. They looked after the land, they were here, and you can feel it, you know. And that's what it means to a lot of our people, especially the Wiradjuri people that live here, like Darren White and Eddie Kneebone. I used to come down here with him a bit, and he would talk about the trees because he was a real tree man, that fella. And, you know, point out, oh, this one's over 100 years old. There's a 1,000-year-old tree down here, you know, and all this business. And can you imagine what it'd be like to be in that time and that, you know, era of 1,000 years and what you would have seen? Perhaps you shouldn't. That's why the leaves fall off. So, yeah. And it's a very, this area is a very, very spiritual area for our people. And even the people that don't come from this area come down here. If they have any problems, they come and just sit near the river and look at, you know, just contemplate the river. And if they, you know, they sing or they talk in their language and they're heard.
This was a meeting place for a lot of tribes.
Yes, it was. The Hypnothang people used to come down and they would show them the way back up to the hills. And that's when they used to eat the boggon moth. And only the men could go. The women used to stay down and collect all the different bits and pieces down there, where the men used to go up into the hills and have the boggon moth. And then they would come back and go their separate ways. But apparently it was a very unique thing for them to do. But the Hypnothang people always came here, always. Eddie Kneebone's father was a Hypnothang and he used to come down here. Wally Cooper's father, all those sort of men were from this area, and they used to come here into this area all the time.
So there were Hypnothang, Yorta, Radjuri,
Yeah,
Dudarawa.
Dudarawas were here too. The Dudarawas were only a what they call a language clan. They're only a very, very small clan. And when they people start to drop out or die out, you know, and pass on, they joined the Wiradjuri people, because the Wiradjuri are very, very strong people. They are a nation. But the Yortas used to come up. They were the river people. They were the ones that used to look after the river, right from here right up to the mountains. They'd be backwards and forwards. And over in Narendra, there was an old river man too. He used to, that's all he did, was look after the river, you know. Look out if you saw you doing anything silly, get a good old slapping up. Don't worry about anything those days. The last robbery that was here, there was a mob coming down from Balranald. See, that's how far they used to come. And they were turned back over here at the hills and told to go back because there was too much sickness down here, they were dying. And so to go back. And that's when the Wiradjuri people all left this area in that time. And only very few lived here then. Very few people were around here at that time. But thank goodness they're all, you know, they've all come back every now and again and had a look at the place and keeps an eye on the place and that. Because I remember Pastor, when he was here, he did all this, you know, the rocks and everything, just so the people would know that this was Aboriginal land. You were welcome, look after it, but you were welcome. And that's what we do today. Welcome, you know, and make sure that people remember the first Australians. And that's what they were. And that's how it is now, you know.
Do you have any knowledge of stories about the Wiradjuri people's relationship with the first white settlers here, you know, the Mitchells, the people who had
The Mitchells, yeah, well, my uncle Archie Williams, his father was a shearer, and he used to shear for them Mitchells, and he said they were lovely people. He had a very good liking for them. That's the liking was the one that they used to say. He had a very good liking for the white people in this area, the Mitchells. And apparently they were very good people, you know, very tolerant people by the sound of what he said. I remember that. And they were welcome down here, but it was too hard, you know, in those days, because the land was being settled by people, you know, and each one of them were hostile to each other. The white man and the Aboriginal were hostile, and they were trying to work each other out, I think, from what I can gather from the old fellas. But yeah, that's about all I know about this area. See, I come from Narendra, so I've been here 40 odd years now. And that was the government resettled era time. So, you know, it's come a long way. Albury has come a long way with helping the Aboriginal people, like the Wangira track. That is so good for our boys, our young men. And it's showing them the way, it's getting them jobs, looking after the land, you know, and being responsible. And it's so good. And the young people are seeing that. And education, like my grandmother said, it's the way to go. In the last 12 months, last year it was, I was told there was over 100 young men and women in Year 12 who passed their Year 12 exams. And they've gone on to high schools and jobs and things like that, and universities.
Is that here in
Albury, around Albury. Isn't that great?
That's fantastic.
You know, and see all the schools, the government schools and the other schools, all help out really good with young Aboriginal students. Because I've been into a lot of the schools and I see what's happening. And it's also good, also good.
You know, you mentioned all the different groups that came from Cairns and Western Australia and that came here. What brought them here?
Government resettlement. They said Albury was a good place. They had good schools, work, and their kids would have a chance in life because they have universities, everything's here. And that's what they've found. And it's been really good. And to meet the different ones of different cultures, what an experience that is. It's such a good experience from different language groups and everything, you know.
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people understand about how different cultures are of the different tribes and.
Yes, I know when I went to TAFE I was shocked, you know. Same with them all up at TAFE, they were all shocked because they thought everybody was the same, you know. No, oh no, you know, and especially like the Wiradjuri people were settled first. They're the ones that the white man saw when they came over the hills at Bathurst and then on and around Sydney, you know, and over the hills over here. The Wiradjuri people were the first ones that they saw. And so they were the resettled mob for them. So that was, you know, that was good to know about it. But the others that came in from Alice Springs and them, they were a challenge. Especially the ones that came from right out bush, you know.
Yeah.
But it was really an experience that I'll never forget, and it's taught me lots and lots of lessons about different people and different ways. It's the same as we've got multicultural people here today. I think it's wonderful, you know. Welcome, you know, what beautiful food. All that stodgy old stuff we used to eat.
Yeah.
Now we have all this gorgeous stuff we can have, you know.
Yeah.
And isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
The Italians, the Greeks, beautiful, and the music and the different ways. Now we've got the Africans with their drums. Oh, I think it's wonderful. I love joining in with them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't know what they're talking about, but I join in with them. Have a good time. And you know, that's what I mean. Australia's got to be open-minded about things. Of course we're going to have people that are going to, you know, want to overtake us, and, you know, we've always had that. But we've always come through it because we're generous people. We know how to react with people, and that's how it goes. The kookaburra is our totem. We all were given totems when we were born by our grandmothers, and we've got to live by that totem for the rest of our lives. I could never, it was to do with marrying, because that had stopped incest then. I could never marry another, say, an emu man or another bird man, because we would be related somewhere along the line, you see?
Yeah.
And the same with the scaly people, you know, and that. So
They'd be reptiles,
yeah,
lizards.
yeah. You marry one of them, and the fishes, but no, I couldn't marry it. And that is a very, very sore point with people that were taken away. They didn't know who they were. I have a friend who didn't know she had 5 sisters and 2 brothers, you know. So she could have married, she had no totem. And they come from the sea, put into Cootamundra Girls' Home. So how would they know? See?
So did they find out eventually?
Yes, but they couldn't make contact with them. They'd been away too long. And that was a big problem. They couldn't go back and make contact with their people then. So that was one of our terrible thing that happened in the past. You know, we talk about it and we would never let that happen again. But, you know, it was past. It's a part of our history and we can't forget that. Like the war was part of our history. And now these kids taken away from their families were part of our history. And we can't forget that. So, you know, you just got to get on with life. They never forget it. Like this woman has never forgotten it. She even has dreams about it today, you know, and she's under psychiatric care all the time and that. And a lot of them have, you know, went to the grog and drugs, never got over it. So you can't pull everybody through it, these things. But you have a good go. And if they can come to a place like this, and I often bring her down here where we meditate on the river, that's where they feel they're, you know, they're home. It is a healing place, a very healing place. One that, you know, that I'm so happy it's going to be handed around and make everybody happy. And it'll be well looked after now. And, you know, just so people can come and feel happy down here and just forget all their pains and worries and things like that. Oh, here she is now, look at her. Come over here.
We're joined by Nancy's granddaughter, Leonie McIntosh.
Nan's lived here for quite some time, so, you know, I've come over for holidays and, you know, build up quite a connection to this spot and Albury and the Murray River as well. You know, I even got flown down from Coffs Harbour to attend Nangira and, you know, run some art workshops and stuff like that. I've been down here fishing, swimming. We've taken our daughter as well as our sun. We have, a strong connection with the water and the land. And there's some really, really special trees here as well. There's a couple of trees that were used to climb up for catching possum. The area was, also used for fishing, and also for collecting the ducks. Turtles used to be found quite regularly in the river, and mussels. And over the years I've slowly watched a lot of these things disappear.
Mama.
Go for a run. And it's been very sad to see, things like the mussels disappearing.
I think I want that one.
Over what sort of a period of time, the mussels?
So I remember they were there the first few Nangiras. And
Nangira was the festival.
yeah, Nangira was the festival, and used to, have a bit of a dip, and you'd find a couple every now and again. And yeah, probably,
10 years? 20?
yeah, I reckon 10.
Yeah,
Yeah,
10 years.
a good 10 years. They haven't been here. There's been a lot of changes, that I've noticed. A lot of dieback through the drought time that we had. And then we had the, bit more wet, and then the flooding, and then, that's washed a lot of old stuff away and, given it a good cleanse. And everything seems to be a lot more healthier and growing, quite well. As I look around, I can see a lot of things. This place is also special because, there's people's ashes in the river. We've had ceremonies here. We've had campovers. The men have had, times where they've, dug and cooked and things like that. So, it is a very special place, and it's a very spiritual place, and something that, we don't want to lose. We want to be able to come here and practice our traditions, teach our young ones how to lift bark, make mini canoes, things like that. So they've got these old skills. We want, to be able to light fires, have proper ceremonies, fix up the entryway, repaint the rocks, and welcome visitors to country the right way. Instead of having ceremony when people come to Australia and they become naturalised, usually at Noriel, it really should be held down here. We're the first people. This is Wiradjuri land, and this is where we had ceremony to welcome people, to welcome new babies and celebrate marriages and life as well as death. And, I just think it would be really good to be able to have a group of representatives from our community, as well as the ceremony being performed together here. It would, I feel, make them a lot more understanding and a lot more connected, and therefore a lot more open to understanding our history and the true history that's happened.
It's good to hear the younger people's perspective of the place, because us older ones, we know about it. We know how we feel, we know we've been on these places before and that sort of thing. But the young people, with all the technology today, it's hard for them to come back to land. and have a yarn. See, that's why it's good to have this little bit of land that we can come together and talk with our children. Not only our children, the wider community. You know, bring the schools down here. Let them connect to the land, let them connect to the river and the waterways. You know, the air and is so different to in town. Everything is so different. And this is where it all begins, here. And a lot of our people began here, you know. So a lot of our grandmothers were born here. A lot of our aunties, uncles, you know. So this is a beginning here. And it'd be lovely to see the ceremonies here, as Leonie said. Make them feel happy and at home and connect. And we wouldn't have any troubles then, would we?
There's discoveries every day saying, you know, we've been here far longer than originally thought. We've always said we were born from the earth. You know, we've always said that. We've always been here. We didn't come from somewhere else. And our songlines, our Dreamtime stories, everything, you know, points to that. And so making sure the community understands respectful values, Wiradjuri ways, and just treats each other kindly, but you can get through a lot. You know, like our community's achieved a wonderful festival. I think we went 10 years, didn't it? Yep. We went 10 years, and we've got an amazing, you know, doctor surgery, 2 corporations, and of course Kuri Kindamana, you know, and all of these things, what people don't realise is they started in the backyard.
Yeah.
You know, this is how they've started. And it was lots of lobbying and lots of submission writing and, you know,
A lot of work.
A lot of work.
A lot of work went into it.
You know, and a lot of unpaid hours because we care about our community, we care about our connections to land, and I guess, you know, I've been fortunate to have my nan, and
Yes.
you know, and without learning about respectful ways early on, it would have been hard for me to sit and listen to every elder that I've met that has wanted to share something, because that's all it's about, really, having fun, sharing and learning. And my son, you know, we got little didgeridoo for him, we call it Yidiki. He's got his own set of clapsticks and, you know, he's got his little curry shirt and he's got, you know, a lot of connection. He knows, like, every morning he'll race outside, check for new bugs, and he'll go, oh, we've got to get a photo of this one, or, you know, we've got a big collection of photos of moths, bugs and all sorts of things.
So he's learning about the plants and the insects and
Oh,
the
yes.
trees and land management already.
That's right, yeah. Teach them from the day they're born.
Yep.
You know, you
That's how I learnt.
read from the moment you know that you're pregnant, you read to them, you talk to them, you sing to them, right through, and you keep doing it. You don't stop. He's 5, I don't stop.
How do you go about passing on language?
Quite challengingly,
Yes, it is quite challenging.
because, you know, like, I've only ever picked up words, I've never learnt the language in full. Nan wouldn't have had the privilege
Never.
of learning
allowed.
language.
It would have been taken away.
And my great-grandmother, you know, like, she was very tight-lipped and closed. You know, a couple of
could speak
aunties I heard them saying some words,
Yeah.
and I asked them, what's that mean? And they just pointed to one of the gum trees and said, you can't go there, you know. So I just assumed that that the tree was, you know, forbidden place, and
Yeah.
that word that they spoke was obviously associated with
With
that
that
tree.
Yeah. And what about dance?
Oh, yes, this one
Dancing.
can dance, yes.
Yep.
She can
And
dance.
that's practiced and passed on?
I've tried to pass it on to my daughter, but she's now living in Melbourne, so
Pretty
it's
hard.
a bit challenging to teach her. I can't teach my son because it's a women's dance. There are like 3 common dances I can teach anybody. There's 4 social dances that I can also do. So, and that's it. They're not as many. They're all connected to the land, the sky, the river, the stars,
Food.
food. Yep. The baby yam digging dance.
Yeah.
You know, the Wiradjuri women's welcome dance. And when I've lived off country, I learnt other dances. I was given permission to learn the other dances, and I was given permission to learn about their bush foods and
So this
all
is
of
another
that.
thing, isn't
You
it,
know,
Lone?
and it's about
Yeah,
being respectful.
permission and being
Yeah.
respectful to that land. Like I couldn't go, say, up to the Hitler thing and do a welcome. I can do acknowledgement of country, say, you know, I'm happy to be on this country, but I can't do a welcome. It's not my land,
That's
you
right.
know, and things like that. So even in different parts of Wiradjuri, you still got to be respectful of their elders, that they do that there and that.
And even in disputed areas, like some boundary areas are still disputed.
Yes.
So, like I'd never do a welcome or an acknowledgement in Wodonga, right? Never. Or down the
I
river.
can do an acknowledgement because I've been given permission, but I don't do a welcome.
Yeah. Whereas
Get all
Only-
20-year-olds.
I only do welcome to country when Nan says, "Can you do this welcome to country?" And so I say, "Yes, I can."
She's my eldest granddaughter,
Yeah.
so they're not, and she can do it.
Yeah.
And if she wants to do it in language, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's up to her.
Yeah.
But, you know,
And plus, I had to get voted in by the community
Yeah.
as well. Like you just can't just jump into that role.
so and I went back to my land, Narendra, to my elders, who was still there at that time, to get permission to do it down here.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
It's all about respect
Yeah.
and everything like
Yeah.
that.
Nance, I just remembered the possum cluck in the Albury Library.
Oh yes, that's a good fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story behind that?
Well, it really belongs to the community. It's a community cape, I call it, because different ones, like Leonie was a part of it, and another daughter of mine, and poor old Uncle Arthur Melrose, and different aspects of the community were on it. Even Janara was
Yeah.
there, my great granddaughter, and so it was put on there by each member or different member of the community. It wasn't only Wiradjuri people, it was everybody, because we were a diverse community, as I told you. And so it was put together for the Commonwealth Games. I wore it down there at the Commonwealth Games with about 200 other people, weren't they?
Yeah.
What I had was very special because it was a community cape. And when I finished with it, they said, "Oh, you can have it." But I thought, no, it belongs to the community, so it ended up in the library museum as a part of the community. And they look after it. It's taken out for ceremonies only now. My grandmother, hers, was made in the old-fashioned way, with the river they'd lay it out, and the river, the sand off the river would be, you know, and the oil, and oh God, it was take ages to do it. Then they'd get the sinew of the kangaroo and boil it up, and then they'd stitch it around. And she used to fish, what was it?
The fish bones.
Bone, yeah, or a needle to sew it. And she was buried in hers. Well, my life has been really a good life, I'd say. I've had some ups and downs and a few roundabouts, but good, you know. And I can see some good things happening here in all this.